Hey everyone, and welcome to the 2026 Block of the Month Club. I am really excited about this project because it is the first time I've ever done something like this. I've actually never even participated in a Block of the Month. Some of you may have done my last Block of the Month, which was a little bit different back in 2025, where I actually did a separate block for every single month. This is actually going to be a full cohesive quilt, and it's called Be Your Quilt for all seasons. This is the project we're working on, and it's gonna be really fun. It's a 50 by 70 inch quilt, so it's a good size. You can add borders to it if you want, make it a little bit bigger, and it's gonna be all foundation paper pieced, which is all that I really ever do. And yeah, I'm really excited. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you will enjoy this project as much as I do. All right, so to get started, we first need to log into my website. So let me share with you my website here on the screen. So you can see here, we have our block of the month, but if you go to January 2026, it's gonna ask you to log in. So it's really important that you log in using the same login that you used when you registered for the block of the month. So you'll go ahead and, this is the sign up, so if you don't already have a login, but all of you should already have a login. So you'll go ahead and click on login, and then you'll log in with email, and then you can click login, and then it'll take you, you'll have access to the January 2026. The site is, as of this video, the site is not currently ready, but it will be by the time you're watching this. So next you are going to want to download the pattern off of the website, and then you are going to need to print it. So let me just show you real quick what you're going to get. Here we're going to get the instructions. So this is very simple instructions. I'll talk about them in a second. And then you're also going to get the pattern pieces. So the pattern pieces are available on letter size and A4 paper. So make sure you're downloading the one that is correct for the size paper that you're using. And you want to make sure that when you go to print the pattern pieces, that you are going to your settings, and you're making sure it's not set to fit to printable area. You want to make sure it's actual size or 100%. Okay, so always make sure that you're printing the pattern pieces at actual size or 100%, and then you can go ahead and hit print. So now that you've printed your pattern pieces and your instructions, let's take a look at what that looks like. So you should have already received the fabric requirements and the title page for our block of the month. The fabric requirements are just an estimation, so please make sure that you are getting enough of the fabric. So maybe you might want to get a little bit more, or at least have the ability to get more if you need it. And then I will show you a little bit later how I've organized my fabric. And then you'll see that we have the instructions. Oh, this is a little out of order. So we have our first page, which is basically going to tell you that we're doing row number 1. So this is the row I've kind of highlighted. That's what we'll be working on. And then you want to print it at actual size, which we already covered. This pattern does require some gluing together of the pieces. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then when you're combining the sections together after you've sewn them, you want to make sure you're looking at the fabric side of the finished section, and then you're placing them as you see on this image here. The first month is very simple. We have A plus B, then we're going to create this little C and D unit there and add it to our AB, and then we can just add E, F, G, and H, and it's very simple instructions and a very simple month. So it shouldn't take you too long to do. So next we're going to talk about your pattern pieces. So all of the pattern pieces will print, and again, make sure that you're printing it at actual size. And you can see that there are some, for example, this one here that has this little glue edge that we need to be mindful of, and that just means that there's another piece that we have to glue together in order to make that full section complete. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these out, and then come back and show you how I glue them together. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've cut out all of my pages, and let me do it overhead and I'll just show you. I'm not too careful when I cut around the dotted lines. I leave a little bit of space. I find that that's really helpful. And let's talk about gluing. So there, in this row, there are 3 sections that need to be glued. There's A, G, and F. Or sorry, A, G, and H that need to be glued together. So I'm going to start with A. And you can see there are 2 glue lines. So there's glue line 2 on one side and glue line 2 on the other. I'm going to choose one of those glue lines and I'm going to cut right on that line. And it's a solid line right under where it says glue line 2. And then what I do is I take my second piece and I'm going to put glue. I use this purple Elmer's glue. I find it works the best. And I'm going to glue right up to that line on the second piece, the one that I did not cut. And then I can go ahead and glue them together, kind of lining up my points and matching up where the edge meets that line. And then I can go ahead and press it down. Now you may want to do something here where you highlight this line or write on this line. Sometimes I have a highlighter, but for now I'll just go like this. And that's just going to let me know I do not want to sew on that line because it does kind of show up a little bit. And I don't want to confuse that for a seam line. So that's how we're going to glue all our 3 shapes together. We have, again, A, G, and H. And when we come back, I will show you a little bit about how I'm going to organize my fabric, and then we're going to start sewing. All right, so now we have our pieces cut out, we have our sections glued together. So now let's talk about fabric. So if you saw my last video, I am going to be using this little file box, which I have filled with some file folders. And each folder is labeled with a number that corresponds to the fabric number from the fabric requirements page. And I've put each color fabric in its little folder. And that's how I'm going to keep all of my fabric organized and all my scraps organized. When I'm done using a color, I'm just going to put it right back into its folder, and that way it won't get me confused with what color is what, and I won't have a bunch of scraps lying around. So I definitely recommend this. You can get a cheap file box or something from Amazon or some file folders. Get creative, however you want to organize your fabric, that's up to you. But this is what works really well for me. I did this recently on another quilt, and I don't think I'm going to go back. So this is a big key point for you guys if you are looking to stay organized when you're doing this. And then another good thing is that once you've got your little bin and your folders, you could get some extra folders and put your pattern in it. You can keep your sections in a folder, or have your finished pieces, whatever you want to do. Just keep it all together in one box and keep it nice and organized. All right, so now we have our pattern cut, our sections glued together. We have all of our fabric and it's all organized. So now we are ready to sew. So some of the tools I'm going to be using, you want to make sure that you have a pair of fabric scissors. A rotary cutter is really helpful. I use a little seam roller. I do this instead of using an iron with every seam. And I have an 1/4 ruler, which I really love. You'll also need your machine. I have my Juki. I love my Juki. Definitely recommend it. I always use like a gray thread, some kind of like light gray, medium gray thread. I find that shows up a little bit less. And then that's really it. Oh, you want to have your stitch length to like a 1.5. That's going to be a really small stitch length so that it perforates the paper, and that way when you are going through and sewing it, it's going to be a lot easier to rip off the paper in the end. So those are the tools that I'm going to use. Oh, also a glue stick. I do use the glue stick while I'm sewing, and I'll show you how I do that. But those are really all the tools that I'm going to be using. So let's go ahead and jump into sewing. All right, so personal preference, I like to sew in order of the patterns. So I like to do my section A first, then B, then C, etc. So I'm going to start with my section A, and I can see here that section A1 is our color number yellow, or 12, which is yellow. So I have that ready here. And then we also need our color number 1, which is our light blue. So I have that here as well. So the first thing that I do is I find the line between A1 and A2, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold A2 over A1, just like that, so that I can see this is basically my seam, this little section here. I'm going to take the first fabric, and it's probably helpful if you iron yours first. I'm really bad at that, so more do as I say, not as I do when it comes to that. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fabric on it so that I can see that the fabric is covering all of A1, and I have the fabric face down. Okay, so that's basically going to be putting the back of the fabric to the back of the paper. And I want to make sure that there's 1/4 inch all the way around. And once I've seen that, I can actually cut my fabric, and I cut it a little bit big just to make sure. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on the back of my A1 section or piece on the paper. So a little glue on the back of the paper, and then I can attach it here. That's just going to keep it nice and secure so that I can it doesn't shift while I'm sewing. Okay, and then this is where the add a quarter comes in. I like this because there's a little notch on your add a quarter ruler where you can butt it up right against the paper, and it's going to give you that perfect 1/4 inch. Something like this I'm actually going to save, and this will go right back in its folder number 12. And I can use that for another piece. So maybe a piece of the bird, or a piece of the beehive, something like that. Okay, so now I see A2 is another little piece. So I would go and just cut off a little piece of the blue. You'll want to get a better blade than I have. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to line this up so that my 1/4 inch, and with the lighter colors you want to be careful that because you want the right side up, and then I can lay the paper right on top, and now we have right sides of the fabric touching, right? And I can see through my paper that my blue fabric is covering, so this is my A2 piece right here. So I see it's covering and there's plenty of room. I want at least 1/4 inch all the way around it. So we're good there. So then we can take it over to the machine. Okay, we can unfold the paper, and we're going to stitch right on the line. So again, 1.5 stitch length, and I'm going to just go right on the line. Now you can back stitch if you want to. I tend to back stitch, I'm just so used to it. Or you can just go beyond the line a little bit, but we're basically sewing right on that line between A1 and A2. Okay, then we'll flip over to the back, and we will press open our fabric. And this is where this seam roller comes in, because I can just go ahead and roll it, and I don't have to go to my iron. And then we're going to repeat that process. So we're going to do A3. So I fold A3 towards me. I take my add a quarter ruler, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my fabric. And then I'm making sure I have the right side of my fabric. And I'm going to lay it down so that seeing through my paper, I can see exactly where my piece is and that the fabric is covering all around it. I'm going to just trim off the selvage. And then I can just go ahead and sew on that line. And again, I can then flip out my fabric and use my seam roller. And that's basically the entire process. So once you finish your whole section, you're going to trim along the dotted lines and then go to your next section. I will be back when all my sections are sewn and trimmed, and then I will show you the next steps. All right, everyone. So I have all of the pieces completed. They've all been sewn and trimmed, and once I sew them all, I trim along that dotted line, and that's going to give me each section. So now we go to our instructions, and here I'll do an overview. Okay, so on our instructions, it says we do A plus B. So I'm going to take just A and B, and I'm going to lay them out exactly like the picture shows. Move that out of the way. And then right sides together, I'm going to line them up, and I'm going to sew on the solid line. That's our 1/4 of an inch. If you want, you can pin. A lot of people will pin just here in the corner. So there's a little point here in the corner. You can pin through there and then come out the other little point in the corner. And as long as you make sure that your pin is perfectly straight, then you should be good. And then once you have your two sections together, go ahead and take off the paper just on that seam allowance. That's going to make it a little bit easier when we go to press it. And then when I when I do two sections together, I always press my seam open. And I think this is probably just a personal preference. You can do however you'd like, but I know that once we start getting into the more detailed areas, it's going to help to reduce a lot of the bulk. So that's one thing that I definitely would recommend. So I'm going to go over to my ironing board at this point, and I'm just going to press right along that seam, and I'm just going to press it open. And a lot of times I'll put one of my little clappers on it to make sure that it stays nice and flat. But here you can see there's my section, my A and B are now together. So then the next part of our instructions say to take our C and our D, and you're going to combine them right here. So I'm going to flip this over, and it is a little bit of an awkward angle. They do have you cut, like on my patterns, they have these little notches you can cut. Sometimes that's helpful just to reduce the bulk in the dog ears. See, I had that upside down. Okay. So it's very important that you look and you match what the picture shows before you start sewing. Okay, and then again, I'm going to just remove the paper from my seam allowance. Okay, so once I've done that, again, I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to open up the seam, and then I'm going to give that a quick press open. Very straightforward, this is very simple instructions. This first month especially is a super simple month with just the basic row. But now we have our C and D together. So now we can take our A and B and we can add C and D. So same kind of concept. Some of these I forgot to trim the little corners. Okay, so I have that together, remove from the seam allowance. This is going to help you so much when it comes time to take off the rest of the papers. So I definitely recommend taking off the paper around the seam allowance. And then we'll open it up and give it a press. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the row. Same concept. Now we're just going to add E, F, G, and H. Very simple, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the final product of our row. All right. All right, and that's it. We have our first row of our quilt complete. So my rule about pressing the seams open, it can be a little bit flexible. So let me show you here. The piece between D and E, I did actually press it over to one side, and that's the side towards E, and that's because this seam gets a little bit bulky where I have C and D coming together. We had some little pieces, so by pressing it over to the E side, it's gonna be a little less bulky right there in that spot there. So I did just want to let you know about that, but that's it. It's a very simple row this month, and I hope that you guys enjoy putting it together. This was a lot of fun. I'm excited to see this whole quilt come together. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me an email or post in the group. So as I mentioned earlier, you guys have access to a private group on my website where you can share questions, comments, share progress photos, things like that. So I want to show you that real quick. So if you go to my website and you go to, there's a couple different ways. You can go to groups under more, or you can go up to my groups if you click on your little arrow by your little icon. And you are in the 2026 Block of the Month Club. So here, feel free to post anything that you want. Pictures, any kind of progress photos, questions especially. I know that people tend to have a lot of questions during these. So that place is really for you. That's your area, similar to how a Facebook group would work, only I do everything through my website. So please feel free to post comments. If you do post on social media, I would love for you to tag me at Julius Handmade, or you can hashtag Julius Handmade BOM 2026. And that would be fantastic. I would love to see what you guys are up to. So until next month, I am looking forward to seeing all of the amazing things that you create. All right, talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.